things first, I'ma say all the words inside my head. I'm fired up and tired of the way that things have been. Oh, ooh, the way that things have been. Oh, ooh. I was broken from a young age, taking my soak into the masses, writing my poems for the few that look at me, took to me, shook at me, feeling me, singing from heartache, from the pain, taking my message from the veins, speaking my lesson from the brain, seeing the beauty through the... Hey, you burn me up, you burn me up, believer, believer. Hey, my life, my love, my life, it came from... Hey, you burn me up, you burn me up, believer, believer.
The world is in motion. It is dynamic. Motion connects. It splits, divides, and separates. But what happens when motion gets out of control? At Seabrae, we are controlling motion. With latest braking technology, we guarantee safety for the most demanding of industries. In ports, in mining, in the steel industry, in power generation. Our brakes are developed by engineers and technicians with an obsession to create exceptional products. Manufactured in Germany at state-of-the-art production facilities. Independently inspected on purpose-built testing equipment, combined with a global presence to ensure safety wherever it is needed. Seabrae, sure to be safe.
Rail logistics. We got this. As a company leading the transformation of logistics in Europe, we're not only about moving goods, but also about challenging our mindsets to redefine the role of rail logistics. This is a new era, an era far beyond locomotives, wagons, and borders. Our borderless Transnet and our last-mile services, in connection with digital solutions, are creating a digital ecosystem that seamlessly connects people, markets, and continents, from Europe to Asia and beyond. More transfer connections mean more opportunities and more sustainability. More transfer connections mean less emissions and less road congestion. Rail freight is for people and the planet. So, go rail or go home.
say all the words inside my head. I'm fired up and tired of the way that things have been. Oh, ooh, the way that things have been. Oh, ooh. I was broken from a young age, taking my soak into the masses, writing my poems for the few that look at me, took to me, shook at me, feeling me, singing from heartache, from the pain, taking my message from the veins, speaking my lesson from the brain, seeing the beauty through the. Hey, you burn me up, you burn me up, believer, believer. Hey, my love, my life, it came from. Hey, you burn me up, you burn me up, believer, believer.
metro qua e molti vengono in macchina. L'ideale sarebbe più una cosa in centro a Milano, per dire, no? O in un posto dove la metropolitana non è comoda. Però almeno loro hanno sposato l'idea e ci dovrebbe essere da qualche parte. Questa cosa la cerco.
Sì, forse sai, sì, come si chiama? Non mi
Si
sponsor.
chiama Can We Go? No, non è uno sponsor. Comunque nel sito c'era, ho visto. Tutto logistica. Sì, però aspetta perché non abbiamo ancora iniziato. Se vedi che inizia gli mandi il messaggio. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 11th Made in Steel. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you. Our claim for this 2025 edition of our event dedicated to the value chain of steel, the claim the beauty of steel. And the beauty of steel is first and foremost the beauty of this wonderful square, so colorful, so modern, designed by the artistic creator Giorgio Guidi, that puts steel at the center, a precious material, the beating heart of the challenges of our time, to valorize its shine, its modernity, its pulsating strength. And it is in this space, from this space, that the beauty of steel is born, not only as a material, but also for its capability to inspire, to evolve. Steel is not just a product, it is a language. It is a language that talks about the future, that involves us, that we need to use with strength, with vision, with passion, to create a stronger society that is sustainable and that is able to tackle the numerous challenges we have to come to terms with. But the number one beauty of steel is first and foremost the community, being here together with all of you. And I would like to thank especially the exhibitors that since 2005 have been participating in this event, transforming it into a workshop of ideas, a cultural platform. I like to think of Made in Steel as the expression of the community. It's a steel community that is growing together with all of us. So in this historical moment, in this difficult, complex, uncertain moment, and in a few minutes we will know also what is happening in Brussels, what is happening in steel. We will talk about the European steel industry. And in this moment of uncertainty, we have tried to put together a program of contents for these 3 days event, starting from the keywords that will define our toolkit that will be necessary to create the steel industry of the future. CedarWeb, that I would like to thank for all their passion and dedication, has tried to focus on the following contents for these 3 days. In a few minutes we will talk about Europe, then we'll specifically talk about the market in the afternoon, and tomorrow afternoon as well, with a conference dedicated to stainless steel. Tomorrow morning, Industry 2025, and finally on Thursday in the morning we will talk about decarbonization, and in the afternoon we will address a topic that is very dear to me: women and enterprises led by women, not only as the feminine expression, but also as a new way to think of the enterprise, an enterprise centered on individuals, men and women, as a driving force of everything. As you will see from our catalogue and our program, this year, in this edition of Made in Steel 2025, we have also multiplied the areas for our discussions, debates and meetings. In the CedarWeb conference room, in the CedarWeb arena, the speaker's corner, the Steel Talking arena, and in the relax area, debates will also take place. So we have increased the areas to allow to have more sharing of knowledge and culture. This is Made in Steel. This is Cedarweb. And before leaving the floor to Paolo, I would like to thank our dead. Thank you very much for trusting us with generosity with a very grand task. And I would like to thank Paolo, because together with him we really do share not only our roots but also our hearts, our vision, our future, our creativity. And from creativity, which is the signature of Made in Steel, well, we are convinced of the fact that the steel industry has changed. It was born from stars, and it is now looking at stars again with that desire of sky, of stars. Let's live these 3 days together, moving together towards a future of steel, notwithstanding the numerous complexities we're facing in this historical moment, to be contaminated by its beauty, to write together new chapters of our future. This is the beauty of steel. I would like to invite now the CEO of Cedarweb, Paolo Morandi, to join me on the stage. Thank you. Good morning and welcome to Made in Steel 2025. This is your home. This is the home of steel. And in these 3 days, we will listen to steel. What makes this event very special is you, the exhibitors in Made in Steel. They make it into a success, just like the companies of the community of steel that meets every day on cedarweb.com. So more than 387 companies, 21% more compared to the 2023 edition, with the plus 35% companies, with 35% of companies coming from abroad. We will have a significant number of visitors. Our target is quality, of course, and one of the objectives of these 3 days is to make business, of course. And we have worked on the quality of the buyers coming from all over the world. Made in Steel is predominantly a moment of exchange for the whole steel industry. And this edition takes place in a very complex historical moment, characterized by threats, challenges, and new opportunities. Cedarweb aims at being an accelerator. We want to connect knowledge, just like our friend Giuliano Noce said, promote new ideas, especially visions, with excellent actors, willing to work together, actors of the whole supply chain. In 2021, we were wearing masks, and we were wondering, how are we going to restart? In 2023, we were actually going through a very positive phase, with the Ukrainian invasion destabilizing the market. Today, this Made in Steel is taking place in a context of uncertainty, as Mr. Paolo Magri said in the first meeting of Industry and Steel 2050. A period dominated by dangerous black clouds. And here we are today, exchanging ideas about the strategies that will take us to the future. Francesca and I have undergone a generational transition. This has been a very positive experience, and we are leading a holding company that operates in the world of steel, with services, providing services, Cedarweb and Made in Steel, and tangible companies. And one of our dad's valuable lessons regards the vision. You have to raise your gaze, you have to look towards the horizon, you have to do things that stand out. And together with Francesca, speaking of Dante's wide and long vision, we are trying to put this into practice. Thinking about the Cedarweb of tomorrow, we're bringing young talent into the team. We're investing, first of all, in the people, in their training, and then in technologies. Think about AI. Because we want to be a propulsive tool for our companies, providing them data, useful information, so that they can tackle the market in the best possible way. In addition to prices, markets, news, insights, analysis and events, in this Made in Steel, Cedarweb is also presenting 3 important new features. The first one is Industry and Steel 2050, a content, a projection project to try and anticipate trends, aware of the fact that we do not have a crystal ball, but convinced that it is important to have your roots in the practical aspects, while not neglecting an exchange with the whole supply chain on current issues. So it is a project made of working tables that will be concluded in May 2026 in Brescia at the CEDA Web Forum. The second new aspect is steel trends. It is a snapshot on our industry, on the Italian and international markets, and here at Made in Steel we're also presenting an additional tool that is contained in Steel Trends that leverages AI to provide you with some extra analysis about the trends, the prices, and this has been done together with Regesta Group, our partners. And then here at Made in Steel we are also presenting CEDA Web Educational. We want to talk about steel, its history, products, applications, focusing especially on the attractiveness of our industry. So we want to widen our scope, talking to the young people, making use of new tools of communications. This is a platform that we are opening today, and that will become populated with content over time. And we have poured a lot of effort in it because we really do care about this world and this material. Francesca is also going to present a book that was published by Il Sole 24 Ore. Let's put our hands together for Francesca. Well done. And finally, a project called Steel Young, dedicated to young generations, with an aperitif tonight in downtown Milan before the football match in the art gallery, where the artist Ruth Behara is presenting her solo show. This artist has designed the awards that will be given for the Made in Steel contest. So I would like you to put your hands together for the CEDA Between, because they've really worked very hard to provide us with the new service and to make this event unique. We have the Ufficio Studi, our research center dedicated to steel, which is envied by everybody in the world, and I'm really proud to thank these amazing people. Made in Steel 2025 has a title, The Beauty of Steel. Giorgio Guidi, our art director, organized the square with new colors and new interpretations. He has also used AI in a creative way. And Ruth Behara has created the works for the best of stands. Ruth is an artist who uses steel and valorizes its aesthetic sides. You've also seen our video. It's like a helter-skelter, but we wanted to describe the present situation. We are there, in between the past and the future, the old and the new, fears and uncertainties, AI and industrial archaeology. With the person at the center, evoking a new humanism, which can start also at events like this one. A new humanism, as Alberto Albertini said during one of our meetings, and we're convinced that the beauty of steel is creativity, made in Italy. It is being together today in this specific moment. Very often in the world of startups, as a friend of mine told me, this friend of mine founded a small startup that became a major company, and he told me that competition is for losers. Well, this is strongly connected to what we were saying this before, talking about my father. I mean, if you do excellent things with a lot of creativity, meeting the market needs is the right direction we all have to follow. And it is with this point of view that we're thinking about new models, like CEDA, which is a value chain platform that we will present soon. It is a very innovative project, and I'm sharing this with you because we are willing to welcome in this new adventure all those excellent companies that have decided to expose this logic of development. I would like to thank Beeper Bank that has shared with us our idea of the future. We have activated a virtuous collaboration with Beeper Bank. They're presenting here at Made in Steel very interesting services on ESG themes, especially for medium and small enterprises. Thank you very much for your support. I would like to thank Fiera Milano. We are thinking about a future development together. We are strong as far as contents are concerned, thanks to our community and CityWeb, and Fiera Milano is a prestigious partner, ideal for this growth. So we want to become a large physical international platform for business, for meetings, for the European and world steel value chain. Fiera Milano next week has an event dedicated to decarbonization, net zero. And we will also be there. I would like to close by thanking all our supporters, Federacciai, Assofermet, and all the people who are sitting in this room now. We do not know how the future will look like, but we are convinced that steel will continue to be a friend of progress and people, a silent friend of progress and people, as Benedetti called it some years ago. And we like to think that we can start building our future step by step together, starting from here, now, and in moments like this one. So good 11th Made in Steel. Enjoy the fair. Thank you. Thank you very much, Paolo. Amongst the mentioned partners, today there's something new because the 2025 Made in Steel edition takes place also in cooperation with the European Parliament, and I would like to thank Mr. Carlo Corazza for their support. In a few minutes, we will listen to the presentations from Strasbourg by two European MPs, Giorgio Gori and Massimiliano Salini. Today, more than ever, when confronted with a steel sector that is going through amazing challenges, thinking about geopolitical challenges and tariffs, we believe that it is a good idea to start this edition of Made in Steel, what they're doing and how they are reacting to safeguard the future of our industry. So I would like to leave the floor to Emanuele Norsa, the coordinator of CityWeb Contents, to join me on stage to introduce the challenges that the European steel industry has to tackle between steel, geopolitics, and the world. Emanuele Norsa.
Good morning, everybody. A very warm welcome from my side too. I'm extremely happy. I'm very glad of being here today before this beautiful public, this beautiful audience. This is a very important day for CityWeb. This is a very important day for Italian metal sector and also for European metal sector. We are going to start now a 3-day meeting regarding the future and also regarding the current situation of Italian steel sector. As Francesca said, we truly wanted to start out this meeting by launching a dialogue with two of our representatives at the European Union, Mr. Salini and Mr. Gore. They are two MEPs. You should be, yes, here they are with us. Thank you very much for being here. A very warm greeting from Milan. Mr. Giorgio Gori, do not need any introduction. He is Vice President of the Commission for Industry, Research and Energy. He is an MEP for Partito Democratico, and Massimiliano Salini has been MEP since 2014 for the Italian political group of Forza Italia. So I would like to start with Mr. Gori. Thank you. You are connected from Strasbourg, and we would like to start with a very straightforward question. In the past month, actually in the past year, European steel manufacturers and Italian steel manufacturers have been talking about an existential crisis of steel working, of steel making. In this 3-day, we want to focus on the beauty of steel, on the very important aspects of steel, but we need to ask ourselves what authorities can do to overcome, to pass this existential crisis, so that this crisis can stop and we can find a new
buongiorno, grazie di averci invitati.
Thanks for having us.
Da qui Massimiliano ed io cerchiamo di fare gli interessi delle nostre imprese e in particolare ci siamo interessati recentemente proprio di questi settori e dell'acciaio innanzitutto. Il quadro non è favorevole, come detto, siamo consapevoli delle difficoltà in cui le aziende che producono acciaio in Europa stanno
our companies. We know that Italian
mettiamo
and European
insieme
steel
il
companies are
problema del
finding it
costo
very hard to
dell'energia,
move on.
che in Italia
If we
peraltro
put
è
together
più
the cost of
vivo
energy
che
that
in altri
in Italy
paesi
is very
europei,
high,
la
is higher
competizione
than in
spesso
other European countries.
sleale
If
che viene da
we
altri
take into
paesi
account
terzi
unfair
extraeuropei che non
competition coming
rispettano le
from
norme che qui
other
invece
countries
sono
outside the
invalse.
European Union,
Il
not
problema
complying
della
with certain
transizione
rules, if we consider the
verso
problem of
un'economia
transition
a
towards
basse
an
emissioni di
economy
anidride
with
carbonica, che
low
ovviamente
carbon
coinvolge anche
emissions,
questi settori
that
che di energia
involves
ne
also
consumano
these
molta.
sectors
Il problema della
that consume a lot of
possibilità di
energy.
avere a
Well, if we
disposizione la
consider
materia
also
prima
the
per
problem of
produrre
raw materials
acciaio
availability
verde,
in order
ovvero
to
i rottami di
manufacture
ferro,
green
e in più
steel,
i dazi che adesso
scrap
arrivano dagli
and
Stati Uniti,
iron scrap. Well,
obiettivamente
if
si
you
compone
consider
un quadro
all the
molto
tariffs
complicato.
coming from the US,
Da qui noi
well,
stiamo
we
cercando
have a very
ripeto, di
complicated general
difendere le
framework
nostre
and picture
imprese,
and
e
scenario.
recentemente
Well, we
proprio
are
io
now
sono
trying
stato relatore di
to
una
support our companies and to
risoluzione
defend them.
approvata
I
a larga maggioranza
have
al Parlamento
recently
europeo
been
sulle
involved
industrie
in
energivore,
legislation that
di
has
cui
been
l'acciaio è
approved in the
probabilmente forse la
European
più
Union
significativa,
regarding companies consuming a
in cui
lot of
abbiamo cercato di
energy,
dare alla Commissione
especially
europea una
steel
serie di
companies, and
indicazioni, di
we tried to
indirizzi, di
provide the
policy
European
utili a questi
Union and the
settori.
European
Il tema
Parliament with some
dell'energia è quello
policies, guidelines.
forse in
Well,
primissimo
the
piano,
topic,
se
this
appunto
topic, which is
trascuriamo per un
energy,
secondo di
is
parlare
a
dei dazi
priority.
americani.
Please forget
E qui
now,
la
please
necessità è
forget
quella di
now
trovare
the
tutte le
American
forme
tariffs. Here we
per
desperately need to find
accelerare la
new
autonomia
forms to
strategica del
accelerate
nostro
the
continente
strategic
dalle
economy
fonti
of
fossili,
our country.
che
We
ci
need
vedono
to
dipendenti da
abandon
fornitori esterni,
to abandon
e in
fossil
particolare
fuels.
dal
We
gas,
are
e
dependent on
per
external providers, external
fare in modo
suppliers,
che
especially when it comes to
i
gas.
produttori
And we need to
che fanno
make
grande
sure
consumo di energia possano
that
accedere
great
a prezzi più
manufacturers
bassi
are able to
rispetto a
access
quello
to
del
lower
mercato
costs,
spot,
lower
dove
prices
sappiamo che
compared to the ones
soprattutto
of
che
the
in tutta
spot
Europa,
market.
ma
We
in
know
Italia con
that in
conseguenze più
Europe and also
negative,
in
il
Europe,
prezzo dell'energia
we know
elettrica
that in Europe
è
and in Italy the
saldato a
price
quello del
of
gas, che è la
energy bill
fonte più
is
costosa.
coupled
E
with
per questo,
the price of
fermo
gas,
qui per
which is
lasciare la
the
parola
most
poi
expensive source.
al mio
And I will
collega,
drop it here in
abbiamo
order to-
cercato di indicare
in
quali
order
sono le
to
strade per
leave the
poter
floor to my
rendere
colleague.
molto più diffuse la pratica dei contratti di
We
lungo
want
termine,
to have
dei PPA o dei contratti per
PPAs
differenza, il
and
cui
other
prezzo appunto può essere
contracts
sganciato da quello del
available
mercato del giorno prima.
whose price can be
È
decoupled from
interessante,
the prices
e ne
of
abbiamo
the
fatto
previous
cenno,
market,
quindi perché sia
previous day
riproposta
market.
anche a scala europea
This is a very
l'iniziativa che in
interesting thing, and
Italia
we want
è stata
to
varata dal
have this
governo, che è
initiative
l'Energy
in
Release, come
Italy as
sapete, che
well, which is
procura
energy
alle
release.
aziende energivore
We
per 3 anni
can
un terzo circa del loro fabbisogno di energia
give
elettrica a un
1/3
prezzo
of the
sensibilmente
energy
più basso,
provision for
in cambio
a very
dell'impegno
sensitive price,
a
a lower
produrre, a
price.
realizzare
In
impianti di
exchange,
produzione
there should
rinnovabili
be new
che poi restituiranno
facilities for renewable
negli anni a
energies, and
venire
in the coming
quell'energia
years
al
that
medesimo
energy
prezzo. Quindi
will
questa mi
be
sembra una delle strade, ma
returned
altre, come
at the same price.
come ho accennato, ne sono state proposte.
Welcome, Mr. Salini. In these past few months, Mr. Gori and also all of us have been talking about the central topic of energy. This topic has been a priority in the Draghi report. We spent many words about it. What are we doing at a European level? I would like to know if the Draghi report was good enough, if it helped to move forward, and if we already know what can we use
Il
out of
rapporto
these
Draghi
inputs.
sicuramente
Well,
si
Draghi
configura
input
nel panorama vastissimo della discussione che all'interno delle istituzioni europee abbiamo avuto nel corso di questo anno intensissimo e drammatico per certi versi. Il rapporto Draghi è una delle sfide più alte che siano mai state lanciate, ma è anche una delle più difficili da attuare, per cui è giustificata la delusione, diciamo, da parte di molti di noi circa la effettiva capacità di penetrazione di quel rapporto dentro le politiche, dentro l'agenda politica dell'Unione Europea, però è altrettanto vero che più una sfida è alta e più è difficile attuarla in tempi brevi. Il tema è capire se quell'agenda politica è diventata parte dei criteri con cui noi costruiamo in tempi graduali la nostra nuova postura dal punto di vista geopolitico, geoeconomico e via discorrendo. A volte è giustificato un po' il dubbio, perché è chiaro che da un lato noi siamo fortemente intenzionati a sostenere l'armonizzazione interna del mercato europeo, la compattezza dell'Unione Europea dal punto di vista economico sulle sfide globali. Siamo fortemente intenzionati a sostenere un approccio che dal punto di vista del nostro Paese sia il più proattivo possibile nei confronti dell'Unione Europea, però al contempo non possiamo negare che i primi provvedimenti adottati siano tutti oggettivamente molto prudenti. È chiaro che lo scopo scossone che è stato ricevuto sia per ragioni geopolitiche che per altre ragioni non è stato integralmente digerito, o meglio, l'industria vorrebbe venisse digerito con più capacità e più ardimento, diciamo così. Gli esempi che faceva il collega Gori sul tema dell'energia lo dimostrano. Siamo ancora in una fase di grande prudenza nel tentativo di risolvere un problema che gli effetti negativi li produce già adesso, non sta aspettando a produrli. Facciamo un esempio: noi abbiamo fortemente discusso, anche alla luce del contenuto del rapporto Draghi, del problema del disaccoppiamento, e Giorgio Gori dava alcuni elementi di carattere tecnico molto puntuali per capire come affrontare questa sfida, perché il disaccoppiamento molti l'hanno anche venduta come un prodotto facile da ottenere, un prodotto molto difficile, però è chiaro anche che nel momento in cui, mentre discuti di possibili formule integrative o comunque di marcia di avvicinamento al disaccoppiamento, poi vedi che una delle ragioni principali per cui gli impianti di produzione di energia elettrica a gas generano un costo alto della nostra energia elettrica italiana in generale, un costo alto dell'energia elettrica in Europa, anche perché il costo principale che hanno da pagare è costituito dall'impatto dell'ETS, e non vedi contemporaneamente una discussione concreta sulla riforma dell'ETS a 360 gradi all'interno delle istituzioni europee, capisci che i criteri utilizzati per fare questa nuova avventura della reindustrializzazione dell'economia europea sono criteri ancora un po' fragili. Sono tanti gli esempi che possiamo utilizzare. Il rapporto Draghi è un'ottima base di partenza. Non ci interessa innanzitutto forzare i tempi dell'agenda politica, conosciamo i tempi della politica, purtroppo non vogliamo abituarvici, però purtroppo siamo responsabili di questa agenda e sappiamo che bisogna accettare la sfida della gradualità, però almeno che i criteri siano quelli. A volte c'è il dubbio che lo sia.
Sometimes we are doubtful about it. We have doubts about it. Well, I don't know if you can see the audience, but we would like to greet you all.
Vediamo solo lei.
No, we can only see you. We cannot see the audience. I'm sorry. Well, I can tell you that the room here is full of people. We have presidents of different associations, and there are also all the greatest entrepreneurs of our sector. In fact, they would like to greet you. They would like to say hello to you. I would like to resume with what Mr. Gori said. Mr. Gori, Mr. Salini said something interesting regarding the timing of European policies. In fact, this timing is always mentioned as one of the main problems, because it looks like European Union is lower compared to other commercial partners, trading partners. On the other side of the ocean, Mr. Trump is now moving very fast, and Mr. Gori mentioned the trade. Well, I have a very straightforward question. What is Europe doing in front of the threat, or in front of the need of a new dialogue with the United States regarding tariffs? Is there any possibility to reach an agreement, or can Europe look somewhere else? Can Europe find new partners somewhere else in the world? Because we know we cannot be independent from the American market, the US market. Yes, that's correct. We cannot be fully independent from the American market. In fact, we exported more than 4 million of tons of steel. In fact, the US is the second country in terms of Italian export. The impact is very sensitive in this case, and the value of this export is higher than 5 billion euros. So we would put our export at risk, and this is not safe. I listened to Commissioner Sefcovic. In fact, he was asked by President von der Leyen to negotiate with the US about tariffs. Well, he provided an update that is not that punctual, that is not that precise. He let us know that negotiations are still running. Well, when Mr. Trump decided to interrupt the mutual tariffs that had been extended to the whole planet, and to any sort of product. Well, Trump decided to interrupt the countermeasures adopted after the tariffs regarding aluminium and steel. This had to be interpreted as a signal of goodwill and openness to dialogue. Well, this dialogue is still on, is still happening. Everyone has their weapon. European Union we have in the European Union our own tools. We can use those tools and weapons, let's say weapons, to control and monitor the possible consequences. One of these tools are digital services. In fact, there are very important interests in the US regarding digital services. Our target is to pave the way as far as possible for trade. The first proposal made by the European Union is no tariff, is zero tariff, okay? Zero mutual tariff, but I can't tell you if that target will be reached. Now, in contradiction with what was said by Massimiliano, the European Union is now doing a lot of things to reinforce trade relations with other actors, other players worldwide. For example, with South America, we are finally completing Mercosur agreement. You know, Mercosur agreement is a free trade agreement. This would represent the greatest, the largest area of free trade worldwide. But we are also doing business with Malaysia, Thailand, and Arab Emirates, so the Arab world. I think that there will be huge possibilities for the European Union. The time US decide to raise barriers, we should be able to take the chance, to take this occasion, and not to lose this opportunity, not miss this opportunity. When it comes to complicated trade relations, I think that the first and the most important effect for the European market regarding Trump's tariff is not the limitation to our export, which would be a serious damage, but is rather the cascade effect coming from the higher barriers risen by Trump when it comes to Chinese steel. Well, we know today that if a problem exists, well, that problem has to be found in the Eastern world, not in the Western world. Well, I think that the overproduction, which is a clear characteristics of China and also of other countries like Northern African countries, well, these effects can influence Europe. That's why we are exhorting the European Union to renovate and to make measures more efficient regarding the deadlines for steel, which will, they will finish in February next year. These measures have been reinterpreted in the past years, but this change in paradigm is a risk for Europe. We know that trade never stops. Trade is like water. Trade will always happen, and Europe could probably run the risk of being affected, being hit by other conditions, other threats. We know, Mr. Salini, that our safeguarding system is a tool that is always there. It cannot be erased, it cannot be abandoned, it has to be monitored all the time. But the question we have for us and for you is that on one hand we know that we need to monitor and we need to safeguard ourselves from unfair exports. On the other hand, we know that our economy is sometimes weak. And is there any risk regarding the impact on the total demand of steel and other goods in a very complicated moment? Where is the equilibrium? Where is the balancing point in this moment? Well, we should be able to negotiate. When it comes to international organizations, we know that these organizations are very weak now. One of the main political aspects that have to be considered is to which extent international organizations are not impacting tangibly on the decisions made by single countries and the regions of the world, like US. Let's say that everyone walks alone in this new scenario. We should consider the way the global GDP is distributed. Today, in terms of decisions in our international organizations, we are classified at the same level of other regions worldwide, regions in which the ratio between the global impact of internal productions and the participation in the creation of global GDP is totally different. Our impact is less than 1/3 when compared to the GDP we generate. There are other regions worldwide in which the ratio is the other way around. So their impact is the triple of the generation of participation of creation of value. Well, we needed to return authoritativeness to international organizations by creating more serious and more consistent systems. Let's say that this is a very old, a very well-known problem. In fact, problems can be solved only if premises are good. If premises are wrong, then the whole system is wrong, because we need to base our premises on the transition model, and this premise today is not holding into account all the value generated by European system. On the other hand, there is a very important commercial thing to be considered. Europe and the US together, well, they represent the half of the value created at a global scale. This is the Western world. We have a very important cultural and economic base that have to be preserved and protected. What does it mean? Well, it means, like Mr. Gori was saying, that if a part of this very important Western world, I mean the US, if this country decides to interrupt trade relationship with China, not holding into account this possible impact with on Europe, well, the risk we run is that we will implode altogether. If the overcapacity in China invades the European market, destroying European institutions, then this effect will be extremely negative on the US as well. In fact, the US are not ready to resume with an American manufacturing system. That's why we need to be consistent when we create a new concept of competition. Today, the problem between the US and Europe is not only the percentage of mutual relatives or the percentage we will find for a new agreement. We need to create a new manufacturing system that is more consistent. We need to see the Western world as a protagonist, and on the other hand, we also need to assess another possibility. I mean, today we cannot only think about how to measure tariffs with the US, but we also need to think about how to protect ourselves. In this initial phase of tariffs, we need to understand what tariffs we can have with China. At least they need to be parallel, they need to be equivalent to the ones we have with the US. That's why we cannot sacrifice European and Italian manufacturing.
Exactly. Very, very interesting. Back to decarbonization, which is a topic that is very important for our supply chain, which is a hard-to-abate supply chain, so one of the key chains that need to be decarbonized following this net zero vision of the European Union. However, the Trump presidency has not only accelerated the dialogue and exchange in commercial terms, but it has also brought about a review of some of the targets or the models of decarbonization. Probably you've read this a couple of days ago, an article by Tony Blair has reposed some questions, and it has also questioned the targets that we had defined. The big drive towards decarbonization dates back to 2005-2006 with President Al Gore, who even won the Nobel Prize because of his decarbonization efforts, and now we are reviewing all this process. So what can we tell the steel industry about all this? I mean, investment is ongoing, but there is also a lot of skepticism. So how can we talk of the decarbonization of the European steel industry today while remembering that we need to be competitive and commercial rules are changing so quickly? Let's start with MP Gori, please. Of course. Well, I believe that companies need certainty. They need a long-term stability. So I am not in favor of ever-changing programs. And I do not believe, unlike what you said, that the US is really going to change direction with regard to decarbonization. Number one, because competencies are in the different states and not only with the federal government, and also because, as we saw in the previous mandate of President Trump, even though the Paris agreements were relinquished, the evolution towards a decarbonized economy has been uninterrupted. So we must go on. Well, we really need to leave behind fossil fuels. We're seeing this internationally. It is no longer a climate issue. It is no longer an environmental topic. We also need to aim at being independent of other partners that are not always our friends, as we have recently seen. It is a complicated transformation, it is clear, but talking to an audience of professionals and entrepreneurs in the Italian steel industry, we can clearly state that Italy is an example for everybody. We have reached a very high level of EAF steel production, and this is what the whole steel industry in Europe will have to do. So we have paved the way. We are pioneers in this respect. The objective by Federacciai of 100% green steel by 2030 is very ambitious, but I support this with all my strength. And Europe has to support this evolution, both in terms of public funds and stimulation of private investment, since we're talking about big money, and also in guaranteeing that there is an adequate market for the green product. So in the resolution I mentioned before, a chapter is dedicated by lead markets, by the creation of a market where the investment made to be environmental is rewarded by the market. And this can be done through public tenders that represent a significant part of steel consumption, and labeling, also voluntary labeling. I mean, this should become a reality, because otherwise we have an impression that the market is not rewarding green investment, but this must become a reality, and the public hand has a very important role to play. This is very interesting. On Thursday morning there will be a meeting dedicated to decarbonization that will actually also focus on the market. So up to which level is a market willing to accept a premium for the cost of decarbonization? And Pissolini, how do you see the situation? Do you also agree that we should not discontinue our evolution towards decarbonization? Of course, we must pursue this target, but on a technological basis. Scrap is a very good example. The legislation has gone through a complex reformulation aiming at the introduction in the list of critical raw materials of scrap as a critical material that must be safeguarded as a basic element for the European industrial production. That project failed because we were unable to carry out a proper technical analysis, because we were too blunt. We reduced the technical debate and discussion within the European institutions to entrusting people to pass a verdict that are not always prepared to do that. So reducing iron scrap to a material that is not even in the secondary list testifies for the need of humbleness in some European institutions. So apart from debating the content of the Green Challenge, we have to take concrete measures. And we should not just declare in the document that iron scrap is a significant material. We have to re-include iron scrap in the Critical Raw Material Act. Since this was not supported in the trilogue, so we need concrete measures that must be undertaken to prove that we believe in a transition that is not conflicting with the competitiveness of our industry. So, scrap as a critical raw material for transition, and energy as the driver for transition. Green energy and energy available at a competitive price. Is that right? Exactly. So the point is to clarify in a definitive way. Of course, you always have to have solid specifications also for the people. They need to understand this. So we need to clarify that if we're building a strategy for the transition of the European economy, well, the European manufacturing industry is a pillar of this. It is not the defendant. So this is the content that is relevant also for our political relations. The political majority in the parliament may not be liked by everybody, but it is supported by those individuals who, like we do, define the pillars of the alliance rather than just look at the color of the different parties. Right, I know that our time is is almost finished, but I would like to briefly hint to CBAM. We spoke of carbonization. ETS is fundamental regarding the cost of energy. We talked about safeguarding the industry. CBAM is something very important for the steel industry. So what should we do? I mean, there have been some revisions, but we know that January 2026 we have some new deadlines. So what should we do as far as CBAM is concerned? Is it still a valid tool? And please correct me if I'm wrong, CBAM was born not just to create a protection system, but also as a system of moral suasion for other allied countries to implement decarbonization strategies. Did it actually work? Should we continue on this route? Well, we don't know whether it worked or not because it hasn't started yet, so we haven't got results yet. But CBAM, which on paper is viewed as a tool to protect the European manufacturing, which suffers from high ETS costs. So this would be a way to push it towards low emission production. But on the other hand, the European industry has to be protected from those imported products that do not follow these logics and therefore represent unfair competition. So the meaning of CBAM is very positive. It is to support companies. Having said this, with the most recent resolution, we actually asked for CBAM to be implemented efficiently. In other words, it mustn't be eluded, so it must be controlled. It is very easy for China, that has a huge production capacity, that is based both on renewable energy sources and coal electricity. So China could actually send clean products to Europe and dirty products somewhere else, but that would mean eluding the CBAM target because we would not produce any positive drive in that country. And then, of course, the burden for export must be safeguarded by some extra burden. And the third consideration, which is also suggested by us affirmed, is extending downstream the CBAM measures that today pertain only to a few industries and raw materials. So we must make sure that also those who started from those raw materials, produce, manufacture, and want to export them to Europe must comply with the CBAM system. Well, potentially this could mean introducing another level of complexity. We're actually working in Brussels and in Strasbourg in the direction of a simplification of the European rules in general, and specifically the environmental rules and directives, because in my opinion, this has been a little bit excessive in the last few years, with significant burden for the companies. So let's simplify. Let's extend CBAM also to the downstream industries, but let's make sure that this does not mean that companies will have an extra level of complication. Thank you very much. So, like Mr. Gori told us, I would like to know from Mr. Salini also what CBAM means for you, because CBAM seems to be the topic for which there is general agreement. Everybody is dissatisfied. There is unanimous criticism towards the system. So how can we limit the complications of the reporting, as Mr. Gori told us, as well as the further complication which is imposed onto our value chain? Well, first of all, you have to create the conditions so that while the CBAM discipline is finalized, we cannot imagine to achieve a finalization unless you reform the ETS system. The two things go hand in hand. So you can't have the CBAM and at the same time the free of cost quotas that are guaranteed to energy, high energy consumption industries are considering. So this must be resolved because it has not been demonstrated, however, which is the impact of CBAM. So we cannot anticipate that we are going to discontinue the free of cost quotas. Regarding circumvention, Mr. Gori was clear. We have two levels. One is to clarify the methods, and then there is the issue of the finished and unfinished product to prevent any circumvention. Export rebates. I mean, this is not just something regarding import, but also safeguarding system for export. I mean, we introduced CBAM in the dialogue with the industrial systems as a tool to protect ourselves from those that do not follow environmental rules. But if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So we must be ready also to change our idea if it doesn't work. So we do not want to be consistent with what we have been claiming until a month ago. We want to be consistent with the reality to make sure that industries and companies can invest. But it is also clear that if you make a mistake, you have to correct it. You shouldn't wait too long. Well, thank you ever so much. You can't see our audience, but everybody has followed with a lot of attention all what you told us. Following you, we will have the presidents of the different associations that will certainly add to what you have said. But I believe it was very important to start with this connection to understand the way how we are connected with Europe. Thank you very much, Mr. Savini, Mr. Gori. Thank you for your time. Thank you very much, and greetings to all of you. The floor back to Francesca Morandi. Thank you very much, Emanuele. That was very interesting. So there's so many challenges for the European steel industry. CBAM, tariffs, safeguarding and protection, and the timing, which is timing of politics, which is totally different from the timing in a company. So thank you very much, and we're here to put steel at the center. CEDAWeb, the community of steel, believe that Made in Steel is not just a meeting, but it is a locus of thought for the growth of the steel community, trying to find together new solutions to a world that is changing at an amazing pace. So the world is changing, and the maps of the old world have changed. So it is necessary to draw new maps for new routes. And we have to do this quickly, because when the external change rate is higher than your internal change rate, your end is close. And CEDAWeb wants to support the whole community. And this is why we try to do this with contents. We've been doing this for 25 years, becoming the only reference point in Italy for the steel industry. CEDAWeb is a cultural platform to disseminate knowledge, information, prices, balances, studies, visions. And Paolo mentioned the new projects with which CEDAWeb is looking at the future, starting from the one I am particularly keen about, the Impresa delle Donne, the Enterprise of Women. We will present a book at Made in Steel dedicated to women, looking at a new way to view enterprises, placing men and women at the center, where the steel industry will move towards a new competitive model based on openness and comparison. So tomorrow we will have the second stage of our meetings dedicated to the industry. So we will try to focus on the different challenges that we have to tackle. Still Young is a project dedicated to the new generations as the driving force of the steel industry, with the claim the steel industry is not what it used to be. Then education, we want to have human beings at the center. It has been estimated that students today study for jobs that do not exist yet. So we want to support companies to want this new enterprise model. And finally, let me tell you this, one last project. Internet was a driving force for CEDAWeb in 2001. And today, AI is going to be, for Paolo and myself, the new challenge. CEDAWeb will be the new platform, the new digital window case where logistics and AI will meet with the steel industry. Many challenges, we don't get bored, so we have many new things like steel trends and all the other programs. But now back to the beauty of steel, to anticipate the next part of our meeting. We are convinced that the beauty of steel is, first of all, the beauty of each one of us and of the relationships that make this meeting possible, starting from exhibitors that since 2025 have had confidence in this event as a locus of thought, of contents. Just like Mr. Gozzi wrote in Sole 24 Ore, companies are showing their capability to relentlessly keep hold of the market. So thank you very much because being here, you're willing to collaborate, to be part of the vision in which Made in Steel becomes knowledge, idea, future, a cultural platform to look at our future. And since we're here together, and this is the beauty of our community, I'm going to ask the presidents of the two main associations of the steel industry, Federacciai and Assofermet, to present their view. So I would like to invite Professor Antonio Gozzi, President of Federacciai and Assofermet, to join me on stage. Thank you.
Thank you. You have been battling for 24 years. You have been in this for 24 years, and I must say that you have used the right words. The right words, well, this is a place to think, and this is a place in which we generate knowledge. This has been made in steel in these 24 years. Made Steel has always supported the protagonists of steelmaking to think, to reflect, and to build new ideas. These new ideas make sure that the Italian steelmaking is a world champion, a European champion and a world champion. I always underline this aspect, always underline this thing, because I can't stand the theory, that attitude, according to which everybody claims, yes, and I'm saying this with self-criticism. I usually wonder how can we behave with a growth of 0.4%, with a diminishing of 0.2% in Germany, so with a differential of 0.6%. How can we behave like this? How can we be negative about Italian economics, about industrial economies? How can we do that? These are own goals. We do not need them. They just make the whole storytelling worse. All these own goals do not allow us to make an effort like the one we did in Confindustria to increase, to improve the Italian and international rating. This slight improvement in Standard & Poor represented 7 to 8 billions of interest less in the Italian debt. 7 to 8 billions. Well, we need to believe in that, because steel-making protagonists truly believed in that. They believed in that and they kept on working. And they are legitimating this claim we have of being European champions. Being European champions does not mean that we need to bear all the negative aspects. In fact, we are one of the main countries all over the world with steel manufacturing that has been decarbonized up to the 80%. With EAF, having this decarbonized manufacturing means that we managed to create the greatest circular economy system in Europe when it comes to steel. And this happened thanks to our old generations, because these old generations, before Greta Thunberg and before Al Gore, well, they created a circle, a virtuous economic system, not knowing what decarbonization was. In fact, EAFs were connected to the power plants of the old pine valleys up in Italy, in the north of Italy. Well, need always generates creativity. Well, our old men in Italy did this. Italian champions and European champions of decarbonization, of circular economy, are the ones who pay the highest cost when it comes to electricity bills in Europe. And they are the same persons. Well, I started to work on scrap with Tajani when he was Commissioner for Industry in 2014. And in more than 10 years of work, when we decided to list scrap in the list of critical raw materials, well, we cannot make sure that 18 million tons cannot, well, these tons can leave Europe. So we are undermining the main raw material of the metalworking in Europe. I want to be clear on this. And I'm addressing Mr. Salini and Mr. Gori. I always tell them the same. I always repeat them the same in our continuous meetings in Brussels. I know that they understand us and they share our view, but I rather address all the technocrats in Brussels, all those guardians, all those populists who cannot acknowledge the mistakes they made and they cannot even correct them. Well, the example of all this is the action plan, the very recent document. After 1 month, after this consideration of the Draghi report, there is no single tangible proposal that is able to solve the greatest problems of steel. Nobody says nothing about the price of energy. They always repeat and repeat that states should decrease the tax rates regarding energy. This is a very good, really a very good European proposal. I'm ironic, obviously. These proposals are against the single market, and this differentiates people. Well, do you want to reduce the price of energy? Well, you need to face ETS, because ETS has a value from 25 to 30 megawatt per hour. Remove then the ETF, because with turbo gas, with the negative mechanism of marginal cost, this will determine all over Europe the price of energy. Electricity, you will have decreased by 25% the price of electricity. Why aren't you doing that? Because ETS is a taboo. So this is an ideological resistance. 18 million tons of scrap are leaving Europe. Well, we have been debating for 11 years of a duty that is equal to the CO2 paid on those scraps. Those scrap will support countries that are not part of the ETS protocol, having an unfair competitive advantage towards us. With Mr. Tajani, we managed to approve this in the European Parliament. This proposal was back to the Commission, and the Germans blocked that. We need to be clear. I have always spoken the same language for years and years at Confindustria. I was described as an anti-European, not a Europeist person. Draghi protected me because he defended me, because he said that we need a turning point, and I'm with him in that, because I know that we need a turning point in Europe. But this turning point is not arriving. We are working and focusing on the labels of green steel, because we have to work together with the European Commission that wants to consider as green a steel mill, comparing it with our fully green Italian steel. Gori stressed the fact that we still propose with Federacciai, and we will do it as soon as possible, but we need to talk with Brussels before. Well, we want to have a green steel due diligence that is effective. We want the label to comply with the emissions of steel, not conventional criteria. You know, Italian people, in 1/3 of the case, they buy green energy from the grid. For 1/3 of the case, in 1/3 of the case, they have green energy with the leasing contracts that are about to start. And the last 1/3 is lacking in order to be in compliance with Scope 2. That's why we are collaborating with the French of Edison and EDF. We have been doing that for 1.5 years in order to get a long-term contract from our French friends and regarding European Union, regarding nuclear power. You know why can't we do that? Because we cannot sign a long-term agreement with a manufacturing company from another country. Well, Mr. Draghi said that everybody should have to wake up finally. Why cannot we have a consortium of Italian companies with a contract signed with a French company? Well, French people are willing to collaborate. You know, they have plenty of power, and they would like to sell this power, this electricity, at a good price. Why am I telling you this? Well, because I think that we need a European turning point. I know that President Orsini wants everybody to speak with a loud voice. I have evoked something that the oldest persons here must remember, which is the march of the 40,000 in Europe. I evoked the march of the 4,000 in Berlaymont in Brussels, because we cannot but raise our voice. the industrials from Poland, from Spain, from France, from Italy, well, we need to raise our voice, because if we do not raise our voice, things will never change. And in front of us, we can see a stagnation period. Please take into account this election, this vote at the German parliament. This is a very bad signal of what is happening in Europe. So please pay attention. If you put together what happened in Romania yesterday, and if you put it together with what happened at the Burdenstein, you realize that we cannot keep on with this way, because otherwise we will be paralyzed and we will die. Okay, so as steel-making actors and players, we need to understand what to do about Europe, what to do with Europe in the next coming years. We cannot be extremists, we cannot be ideological, we cannot express and stress trivial concepts. We needed to be brave enough. Tony Blair said that we need to admit that the objectives of decarbonizations are not reachable, are not feasible, and this way of doing things has failed. We need politicians to say the same, because they are totally aware of this thing, but they don't want to be perceived as negationists, as conspiracy people. Well, a place like this is the perfect place to get fresh air, to abandon the mainstream. If the idea of a net zero regarding tariffs, which is a possible hypothesis, a possible idea, I'm making reference to a great European and Atlantic area extended to Japan and extended to Australia and Korea. Well, the proposal we received from the Biden administration 2 years ago was about removing the 232, which was removing the steel tariffs imposed by the first Trump administration. Well, we did not complete this proposal because the American conditions were the following. If Europe was not to be a place of transition, the 232 had to be kept regarding the overcapacity of China. This was the proposal by our American friends, and it made sense. But yet, the European Union rejected this proposal. We came across Dombrovskis twice, and he repeated that this proposal was not compatible with the rules of the WTO. And we are the only ones in Europe complying with those rules. Europeans are the only ones complying with these rules. Try to imagine how good it would have been to create this free trade area, and how good it would have been for the Trump administration to question a free trade area between friends. We needed to be blamed about it because we could have reached that agreement, and yet we rejected it. That's why we need a cultural revolution. We need to explain how things are. We need to understand how things are functioning. We need to be brave enough to interpret reality and to read reality. And we need to develop tangible actions to safeguard the manufacturing system of our industrial country, which is Italy. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I now take the chance to repeat that from this stage. Well, looking at these challenges, we at CEDARWeb and as a study office, we are more than happy to be available to raise our voice and to ask for new challenges as a single actor, a single player. I now ask the president of Assofermet, Cinzia Vezzosi, to share her speech with our audience. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. I would like to thank Silverweb because it's a great honor for me to be here. I would like to thank Francesca and Paolo Morandi for the kind invitation. This is a honor for me because Made in Steel has now become a place for meeting, place for coming together. And I think everybody acknowledges this. Everybody sees this as a great opportunity for the whole sector. This opportunity we have wants to put us together, to keep us together. And I believe that this is the right attitude. At us, Sofermet, we have always been in line with this, and that's why we always participate, and we are more than happy of being here. This claim, Beauty of Steel, is a very challenging one, and yet we must say that steel is really beautiful. There is an intrinsic beauty, there is an inner beauty, and it is very easy to understand what kind of beauty we're talking about, and it is about buildings and means of transportation. There is also an extrinsic beauty which can be acknowledged in the objects of art, watches and other pieces of art, and this goes beyond the beauty of steel itself. But there is also a further beauty that is hidden inside the foldings of steel. And this beauty is the combination between resistance and flexibility. This is what permits steel to be subject to extension or to be thinner and thinner, to reduce its thickness, and yet maintaining its resistance. So this is the ability of steel to adapt, to adjust to different situations without losing its own characteristics. So I would say that steel is resilient, and resilience is its own beauty, its real beauty. It couldn't be differently, because the resiliency is the feature, is the characteristic that represents the priority of this sector. Steel sector is a sector, as Mr. Gozzi said, that has always proved to be extremely resilient. Our companies, our firms, the ones we represent at Assofermet, well, they were able enough to renovate themselves, to talk a different language, a new language. They needed to face the lean process, engineerization, and they needed to make international investments to be competitive on international markets. This trend was consolidated, and it generated a huge change inside our reality, inside our world. That's why those companies today represent a great industrial champion. In fact, they have a very high degree of competence, of skill. In fact, we can provide the manufacturing system excellent products. And we know that the manufacturing system is more and more demanding today. We needed to take a step forward in the last few years. In fact, we needed to change the definition of our association, the name of our association, and we decided to align it with the real representation of our chain, of our sector. Today we represent trade, but also the processing company. These companies have changed over time, they have evolved, and they have gone through very important challenges. For example, take, for instance, the pandemic and also the political choices of decarbonizations. Bear in mind the way they have been described by President Gozzi. Well, for sure, these new challenges, they help us share new intentions and new challenges. Well, these challenges have been described with a very difficult timing, in most of the cases an impossible one, and a lack of adequacy of tools. In fact, companies desperately need tools if they want to evolve and if they want to adjust to a new reality, a new transformation. Also, take into account the two wars we are going through, we are witnessing. In Europe, we have a very weak side. On one side, we have energy, and on one side, we have defense. I'm not going to talk about defense because we have largely debated upon it, but for sure, we know that defense is a very hot topic. In fact, we are split in Europe regarding defense, but they are existential topics for Italy. They are extremely important for our country. And today, the US policies and tariffs are shaking, are creating an interruption in decades and decades of collaboration and partnership. In fact, NATO has joined two different continents, Europe on one hand and the US on the other. Well, today we need to find a new setup for this transatlantic relationship and agreement. Today we are seeing a new protectionism. There are tariffs used as shields for US economies, and we are finding it very difficult to move and to take steps in these difficult situations. We want to keep our positiveness. We want to be positive with a positive mindset, and we really hope the negotiations to be okay and to give us a positive result. We hope these negotiations will help to reframe commercial transactions and relationship. And I would like to borrow something Antonio Marcegaglia said some days ago. We need to be back to a language made of facts, because only facts can talk, only facts are important, only facts are tangible. We need to turn down the volume sometimes, and we needed to negotiate again. We need to be able to negotiate again, because only by negotiating we can do a great job, a good job. We ask the whole Europe to be committed on this line and on this front, but we know that this is what they are doing up in Brussels, and we rely on them. We trust them, and we know that this work is going to give positive results. I would like to talk about the Mediterranean Transition Plan. All of us were expecting something from this great occasion, but actually I think that we are kind of disappointed right now. For sure, manufacturers are extremely disappointed, and I totally agree with Tonino, because regarding energy and regarding other measures, a few things were done, a few promises were made, but nothing tangible actually. But at the same time, all the measures and the attention paid was related to manufacturing. This is the first problem. The second one is related to the decision of closing the barriers to scrap exportation. And together with Tonino, we know that we have two different standpoints, different ideas, but this topic endangers the recycling European sector. The first problem is related to the measures that are not sufficient. They are not enough, and they are focused only on production, only on manufacturing. At Assofermet, we wrote more than one report, and we identified in these reports the lack of input for internal domestic demand. Unfortunately, in the last 10 years, in the European Union, we lost about 10%. And this happened in spite of the protectionism measures implemented by the European Union, like the safeguarding for steel. It started in 2018 and will finish in 2026. Anti-dumping tariffs and anti-subvention tariffs. All these measures proved to be inefficient, and they didn't give the results we were expecting. So now, according to the plan, the approach of the European Union is not complete. In this document, in this plan, no attention is posed on the way we should behave, the new push we should give to an increase in steel production. We need to increase our internal and domestic demand in order to support the internal production and the whole sector. When we talk about sector, we make reference to a very important one. In fact, this sector has a fundamental asset, and we want this asset to be healthy, which is European steel mills. But on the other hand, we know that there are other segments, other parts that are trade, distribution, processing, and manufacturing. If we put all these sectors, these segments together, we would be talking about 3.5 million of jobs. That's why we need to safeguard these jobs. As a consequence, the input of the European Commission should be starting from this point if they really want to reconstruct, to rebuild the whole sector, the whole industry. We are concerned, but if the system keeps on being like this, and if the European manufacturing system will never grow, it will be rather pushed to outsource and to keep on outsourcing. Well, I must say that in this case, European and Italian steelmaking will become irrelevant. And the sector itself, the industry itself, will become irrelevant. We don't want to see this scenario. This is a worst case scenario nobody wants to see. We cannot permit this to happen, okay? And this is a fundamental, this is a crucial topic, because now that a new tariffs war is happening with Trump administration, we know that these things are crucial. And this thing is a further risk we have, especially in case there is no agreement, in case we cannot find any agreement. Well, the consequences would be extremely negative for companies and for firms. That's why we ask the European Commission to review this plan and to implement it with tangible measures that can help us, that can accelerate this change we need. And we want these measures to call a new push for steel consumption in the single market, in our European market.
Let me now move on to the next problem, scrap export. So there is the desire to have a clear commercial measure by the third quarter of this year that cannot be identified because they were unable to explain this to us, but it is a commercial measure that can somehow prevent export of scrap, so that this resource can be made available to the European steel industry. We can avoid talking about 2026 because other measures should be undertaken by 2026. Anyway, that's a target. So the European Commission is writing this claim in the document in which simultaneously the European Commission states that given the present situation, the demand for recycled steel in the European Union is clearly lower than the availability. Well, this type of attitude, which does not take into consideration the Wishimer regulation that was launched on the 2nd of April 2024 that already provides very strict export rules, and that simultaneously does not adopt concrete measures to increase the demand for that resource, which we define as a strategic resource in Europe. Well, I believe that there's some incongruity. The European recycling industry collects each year 100 million tons. Of these 100 million tons, 80% is used. 20% is a wonderful resource, a strategic resource that everybody loves, but that it is not used. And it is not absorbed. Why? Well, because unlike Italy, that has an excellent steel industry, predominantly EAF, in the remaining part of Europe, we have predominantly blast furnaces. So it is clear that the scrap that is left unused, if it is exported, it is not something that is stolen away from steel industry, but it is a surplus of a structural decrease in the production of European steel. So, as the production of European steel decreases, that type of material will become more and more available. And the export of this material becomes a fundamental element of the circular economy in Europe. that is excellent as far as capillarity is concerned, but that is not supported by the European steel industry. So all what has been made by recycling companies is excellent. We have the most advanced recycling companies, we've got the best technology. To implement this technology, companies have always and only invested their own private money. They have never been supported. And maybe we should review this as well. However, it is clear that if we want to maintain those companies at their level of technological progress, and if you want to allow them to go on investing, then these companies must have an operating margin which is consistent with their own corporate activity. So this is why we are asking the European Commission to review the metal exemption plan with the different perspective, rather than based on a storytelling which certainly belongs certainly has become part of the knowledge of many of us. But like Mr. Salini said, I actually want to defend the situation with a loud voice. I believe this is the right time to do that. We need to make our voice heard so that we can finally say that this resource that we do have and which is available for the steel industry is not critical but is strategic. So companies will be willing to provide it to the steel industry. One last point before I conclude. We need, and I absolutely agree with Mr. Donino, we need to change the way how we consider things. We must widen our vision. Steel can still be the matrix of the European Union if we recognize the value of the whole value chain. When we export, we do not export a product. We export the capability of being a system. And we must safeguard the system because it works and it is an excellence. We're all here today because we believe that we have a wonderful interconnected community, and that's the beauty Francesca was talking about. We are a large community, a grand community, and we have to take on the challenges. It is our task. We must try to analyze, synthesize, and recompose our value chain, notwithstanding differences, notwithstanding discrepancies between us and Federacciai, the two parts of this steel value chain. I'm absolutely convinced that we share much more than we think, and it is in these fields that we can work together. And this is the starting point. And if we want to do that, if we want a dialogue, I know that we need to support dialogue. It is important for us and for Europe. And this would be the right way to go. And maybe it could happen here today. Thank you very much and enjoy Made in Steel. Thank you very much, President Vezzosi. Right, you have launched many keywords which we're going to explore in the next few days in the different areas, Sidra Web Arena, Steel Tucano Arena, in this wonderful, colorful room. 3 days, very rich in events. So please have a look at our complete program on our website, in the app, and in the paper catalog, because we are really trying to offer as much as possible. And keywords like geopolitics and digitization will be part of our scenario to explore connections That will be possible thanks to moments like this one, thanks to Made in Steel, which is a container for our community and our way of thinking. Here at Fiera Milano, in the space where the beauty of steel is born, which is a language we all share and we can all use to create a stronger, more sustainable society in the future, I would like to ask the president of Fiera Milano, Carlo Bonomi, to come to the podium for some greeting words. Thank you very much. Dear guests, I would like to thank the CEO of CedarWeb, Mr. Paolo Morandi, for inviting me here, and I would like to greet my dear friend, Mr. Antonio Gozzi, who has actually stirred up something inside me, but we can talk about this later on. Anyway, as the president of Fiera Milano, it is an honor to host Made in Steel for two main reasons. Number one, because thanks to your steel, these halls and the halls juxtaposed next year will be hosting some competitions of the Winter Olympics. Specifically here, the hockey competitions, and in the other hall, speed skating competitions. In that hall, we have used 1/4 of the steel used for the Eiffel Tower. So Fiera Milano has bought a lot of steel and has contributed to the success of your value chain. But apart from this, it is an honor for me to participate in this edition of Made in Steel. Not only because, as previous speakers recalled, this has become a reservoir for visions, exchanges, comparisons, orientation regarding steel issues, but also because I am convinced that steel actually defines the industry and the manufacturing of the future. Everything starts with steel. And this is a place, a privileged observatory on the transformation of our industrial texture. Steel is not a raw material. Steel has become the key to interpret our times. All what we've heard today, the presentations by the previous speakers, have demonstrated that steel will be fundamental for the future of our world, because steel is the pre-requirement for the industry of the future. Many topics have been addressed, many difficulties have been mentioned, but as an entrepreneur, I would like to share with you some of Antonio's remarks. Well, first of all, the European Union is born with steel. Let's not forget that. So when we think about some possible mistakes that we have made, we're doing this in good faith. And we're doing this persuaded that it is in the interest of the Italian and the European manufacturing. The European community of coal and steel, that was the beginning of the European Union, and entrepreneurs working in this field cannot but be European. However, I believe that, like Antonio anticipated and stressed several times, we should not cry on our woes, but rather we should highlight the advantages and the excellence in the Italian manufacturing, but we must also be very fair. So I remember that a short while ago, in 2022, the energy cost was 8 times the present cost. Together, we safeguarded this industry. And in 2022, if you look at the balance sheets of this industry, maybe that was the best year for the steel industry. Why? Because we were the first ones to behave diligently. It is true Europe is making some mistakes, but let's not forget that we have had an industrial recession for the last 25 months. So, okay, let's try to improve also the Italian situation. And after making these personal remarks, I would like to conclude by saying that here we are talking of the industry of the future. And we should tell this to more people. We should not just limit ourselves to the steel industry. As an Italian entrepreneur and on behalf of Fiera Milano, I would like to thank your companies for what they are doing, for what they are tackling in the interest of the whole country. I've always said that without an industry, we do not have Italy, but without steel, there's no industry. Thank you very much. Enjoy the fair. Thank you. Thank you very much, President Bonomi. So this morning we have had a very rich series of presentations, and let's now listen to the last point of view to understand this event. Thank you very much for all your presentations. These were not just greeting words, but they were very rich in vision and messages. So, the last point of view to interpret Made in Steel, a workshop of ideas, a locus of thought, a cultural platform. We have several partnerships, but one partner is particularly relevant for us. BPER. We have been partners for years, and we share the very same idea of innovation and future. Today we have with us Mr. Marco Mandelli, Chief Corporate and Investment Banking Officer of BPER. Welcome to the podium. Thank you very much, Francesco. Thank you very much to the Morandi family. Tomorrow I am giving a lecture in Bocconi about the generational shift, and I'm going to quote you. And that will be an excellent presentation. Just a few minutes to change the context a little bit. Then I will spend a few words on our partnership with CityWeb. And then I will also provide you with the way how we view this industry from our observatory. So if I had come here 1 month ago, I would have been much more worried than I am today. Because when the United States proclaimed their tariffs, our bank organized a war room. Every morning we used to meet with our risk experts and finance experts to understand what was going to happen on the markets. But this morning we decided to meet once a week, and maybe we will soon stop. So after 1 month from that terrible declaration made by President Trump, well, we are left with a market that has totally recovered in terms of equity its previous values. The dollar has weakened and is still weak, and the oil has a price of $60 per barrel. And there is also an acceleration in the reduction of the cost of financing. We haven't mentioned this today, but we have left the peak behind. Now we're talking about 2 basis points lower interest rates. So I trust in the capability of the markets to self-regulate. I mean, the scenario described by President Trump cannot be easily become a reality, because today the USA doesn't have the industrial capability to do those things that you do very well today. And you must be proud of this. So why did we enter this partnership with CityWeb? Well, after more than 10 years, we are still super happy to be with you, to have a long-term partnership with you, because we believe that Italy, being the second manufacturing country in Europe, must recognize that the steel industry is #1 industry, because a lot originates from here, and it is wonderful to be active in this industry. And we appreciate all the different souls that make up this industry. Of course, there are many different professionalities to make up this value chain. In this enlarged industry, we allocate several billion euros, so we're happy to understand the features, the trends, the evolution of the market. And we also feel responsible. We are the third bank in our country in a context in which banks are going through a consolidation process. I know that sometimes you do not like this that much, so we feel responsible. I mean, if you understand something better, you feel more confident in doing it, in developing it. So this is very important for us. Uh, 2024 was for sure a tough year for you all. Based on our analysis and our forecasts, we expect 2025 to be a year where a small recovery is still possible. Positive things are happening, apart from the negative ones I've mentioned. And hopefully, part of the Arm Europe money will go towards the European and Italian companies. We believe that the Merz plan, apart from what happened this morning in the Parliament, will lead to some investment in infrastructures that will be beneficial to our value chain. Also in France, there is a lot of talk about expenditure with possible investment. So there are all the necessary elements so that 25 is better than 24. This industry today is something we view with positivity. Less than 50% of the money that we can provide these industries with is actually used. So you have proven that you are able, maybe this is typical of family-owned companies. Family-owned companies always have a long-term vision. So they do not proceed quarter by quarter, but they have a longer time horizon. So I've always seen in the entrepreneurs in this industry the capability of going through excellent years and capitalizing their profits. So today we see companies that often have assets that are twice as much as what they had in 2021. So the asset we can provide, the funds we can provide, are generally used only up to 50% of the availability. So the bank, the entrepreneurs, as well as all the other partners, and in the afternoon there will be a conference during which we'll tell you what we can do to support internationalization, how you can work with such and other tools that can allow us to support you in a less conventional way, in a less classical way. So we want to do this with our service model, which is that of being a large bank that will probably become even bigger and larger, that, however, is very close to its own local activities. We believe in this peculiarity, that is, having the financial strength and the capability in our day-by-day banking and in extraordinary operations without forgetting where we come from, our area, the fact that our heritage is that of People's Bank. So this is how we want to assist you. Thank you very much and enjoy Made in Steel. Thank you. Thank you very much also for quoting us as a case history of a generational shift. So a long and large time horizon, and with this long-term vision, with the need of being creative. I love the idea that creativity is born out of need. So with this beauty, with this wealth of contents that you have provided us with, I wish you all the best, Made in Steel. And I hope it is as creative, as long, and as excellent as possible for all of you. Thank you very much.
First things first, I'ma say all the words inside my head. I'm fired up and tired of the way that things have been. Oh, ooh, the way that things have been. Oh, ooh. I was broken from a young age, taking my soak into the masses, writing my poems for the few that look at me, took to me, shook at me, feeling me, singing from heartache, from the pain, taking my message from the veins, speaking my lesson from the brain, seeing the beauty through the. You made me a believer, believer.